What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, I'm going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and, well, anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey guys, listen, if you were searching on the internet for some other movie podcasts and you stumbled across ours, you came into our home, and you're like, where am I? What is happening? And we're like, no, don't leave. We welcome you. And, if you're not a movie fan, hopefully we can convince you to be one, because this is a movie community. We love talking about the same thing, and we love just getting super geeky and sweaty about it. It's fantastic. You should probably stay and join, because, this is one of the best around. I'm not just saying that because I co-hosted, but I firmly believe that. My co-host over there, he props this show up by himself. I don't know why people listen to me, but whatever. To each his own. But if you are new to the show, welcome. What we typically do is we'll go over some movie news, trailers that drop throughout the week, and we'll commentate on them for you guys, and then we'll have a review of a movie or movies on the weekend, and then box office results to accompany that. A little different this week, but I'll explain in just a second. But if you are a returning listener, we welcome you back. On this week's episode 223, we're going to be going over Unsane, and Joel will have a mini review of Pacific Rim Uprising. And we will not have box office results this week because this is recording on a Saturday. You guys get it a day early. You're welcome. So that's typically how the show goes, and I'm excited to talk about some stuff, especially the first story, because it's absolutely bonkers, and I remember when it was happening. But before we get into that, the co-host is over there. He's in their corner. He's ready to go. Joel, how are we doing this week?
I'm doing pretty well. You're right. We're not really recording on any box office results this week, although I will say that apparently as of today, Black Panther is the most profitable superhero movie of all time. So that's insane. It's crazy to think that happened in only, a month and a week. But crazy stuff. But yeah, it's a good episode today, for sure. Yeah,
I'm excited to get a little Unsane in the membrane, as one of our fellow critics put it in their headline, and it was actually a pretty clever one. But yeah, I'm ready to do this. My week wasn't really eventful. I mean,
yeah, same here. Really.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I saw Pacific Rim Uprising on Tuesday. There is something I want to kind of pimp out on Netflix. I did see Wild Wild Country, the new Duplass Brothers docu-series about the OSHA cult, as people called it, the group of people that came to Oregon, bought out this 500-acre ranch. I know it's not that number, but it was a huge ranch, and they built their own utopia. It was crazy. Definitely, Netflix is better at TV shows and movies. But if I had to pick any type of genre within their movies, their docu-series are fantastic. When you think about Making a Murderer or The Keepers or now Wild Wild Country, they're really good at picking out some really great material there. So if you have not checked out Wild Wild Country and you're into the docu-series on Netflix, check it out. It is creepy as hell, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's go ahead and get this party started, Joel. Joel, this first story in the news, it's insane, and I actually can't wait for it. I hate that it happened because it involves things leaking and throwing people under the bus and stuff, but there's an unexpected hero into it, so let me explain myself. So Jason Weiner, who has directed some Modern Family, is going to be tackling the Gawker versus Thiel script, which, if you guys don't know, the infamous Gawker story, this is where Hulk Hogan sued Gawker for $100 million because they leaked a sex tape of him, and he did not like that, and so he kind of fought back. Now, I actually never read into the story. I knew of that, and I was like, go get him, Hulk. I don't think anyone should have their stuff leaked without consent, so you go for it. But here's what I was reading, and this is what I found pretty interesting. So there's a lot of people involved in this scandal than I initially thought. We have Hulk Hogan, who is suing Gawker, right, for $100 million. And then we have the owner of Gawker, who basically outed, what's his name, Peter Thiel, as gay. He just outed him. And apparently Theo did not like that, and this guy's a billionaire, right? So when he heard about the Hulk Hogan situation, he funded all of Hulk Hogan's defense fees. So like this guy was like on a vindictive like path to like take Gawker down because they wronged him in the past. And I was like, I was, you know, like when you're reading the story, you're like, man, I want to root for this guy. Like, yeah, I mean, because you shouldn't, you know, do people like that dirty. And so I'm kind of glad that Hulk Hogan found someone that was just as angry as him and took him down. And, you know, Gawker lost, and they didn't end up paying Hulk Hogan $100. It was around 115, and that pretty much made Gawker go into bankruptcy. And so I remember this was a huge story back in the day, and I remember following it, just kind of see how it would play out. But Joel, it was one of those crazy stories I'm sure you remember, and I want to see a movie about this because this is one of those kind of fascinating court case type of movies that I'm totally down with. One of my favorite genres is court movies. If you could just have a whole movie in a courtroom or even a jury room, like, you know, 12 Angry Men, and you can make it compelling, I'm all on board. Case in point, when I saw the O.J. Made in America documentary, which was like 1,200 hours long, there was a good portion where it was like 5 or 6 hours straight up in the courtroom, and I was like enthralled, and I was tuned in the entire time. It was fantastic. So I cannot wait for this, Joel. I know it's a depressing story, knowing that, you know, people did people dirty, but as far as like, you know, a piece of entertainment and like a story, it can be something that could work well in the suspense kind of thriller courtroom drama aspect. So I actually really want to see this. I didn't know this was happening.
Yeah, it's crazy. So there was a documentary last year that I watched. It was a Netflix original, actually, called Nobody Speak: Trials of the Free Press. And it was half of it was focused on this story. It told of the Hulk Hogan sex tape, this whole scandal, and then it went off into another thing involving the Las Vegas Review-Journal. But it was the better half of the documentary. It was the really interesting part of it, and it was only an okay documentary. But that's where I actually learned about most of this stuff. I knew like that it happened back when it happened, but I never really looked into it. So I'm sort of like you in that way. And yeah, it's a crazy story. I'm glad that somebody's taking this on. I just want them to get the guy that played him in a few scenes in The Social Network to play him again. I think that would be fun because he was one of the backers of Facebook originally, and Peter Thiel is how you pronounce that.
Oh, Thiel.
And yeah,
Excuse
he was played by one of those guys from CSI, Wallace Langham, who was good in his couple of scenes, and I think that it would be fun if they got him again, but they probably won't. In any case, this is an interesting director to take this on, somebody who's worked in sitcoms or a sitcom for the better part of a decade. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it turns out. For sure.
Yeah, it's just one of those fascinating stories, dude. Like, believe it or not, it might be my favorite story of the week, and just to kind of throw it out there, just because I kind of want to see this play out like an O.J. Simpson situation where it's just, you know, a really good, well-told court drama. I mean, that's all we're looking for. But
it might be mine as well, although there's another story that's just so insane that might be my favorite one to talk about. We'll get to that last.
Yes.
So, guys, moving on to our next story. This one, I think we talked about it. Was it last week or the week before? I can't remember. Anyway, that this is happening. That Chris Hemsworth is going to be in a Men in Black reboot, and I reported that they're looking for an older gentleman, I think, and then a woman of color to play a role in this series as well. I think it's going to be 3 leads, and they found the female lead. It's going to be Tessa Thompson. I'm a little kind of interested in. I'm much more interested in this now because of this casting, because I think that they worked really well together in Thor Ragnarok. And but I'm really interested in the fact that they didn't take advantage of the star that right now is Tiffany Haddish, because I think that that would have been a bit of a more interesting pairing than two people who have worked before, and that's only because it's been so recently. This is obviously probably going to come out next year, which to me, if this is going to be a franchise, tells me that there's a certain fate in store for Thor in this next movie, in Avengers Infinity War. That's part of what this tells me. But in any case, this is probably going to come out next year or 2020. I'm not entirely sure. I like this. I like this pairing. I think that they worked really well in Thor, and I'm excited to see them tackle this kind of material. It's probably going to be comedic, given this the whole thing. I'm now waiting. Who are they going to get for the older role? Is it going to be like Robert De Niro or something? I don't know, but probably not Tommy Lee Jones. I'm going to guess. But yeah, so are you a little more interested now?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm not like the biggest Men in Black fan, where I'm just like I go crazy over them. Like they're fun movies, and of course the chemistry between Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones is the crux of that entire franchise. And so when you think about who's going to have great chemistry with Chris Hemsworth, it only makes business sense to cast the person that was literally just in a movie with him a few months ago. And in the movie Thor Ragnarok, they have great chemistry. I loved her character, Valkyrie, this troubling alcoholic, just stumbles around all over the place, and Thor's more comedic than ever. I don't know, it just worked for me. And so if you're sitting there as a business executive and you go, all right, we're making a Men in Black movie, Chris Hemsworth as our star, we need to find a co-lead. Who can we? Thor Ragnarok. He was really great with Tessa. It makes perfect sense. I mean, if you think about it from a business point, from a story standpoint, it could work. And now, as Joel put it in the notes, I'm a bit more interested now.
Yeah, it's a very promising story and a promising pairing, and I'm definitely interested in seeing what they cook up. I'm not like some Men in Black purist. I like the first movie. I like the third movie. I think the second movie is garbage. So they've done two good things out of three, and but like even the first movie, I think that it holds up well, but it holds up as just pretty entertaining. It's not some great classic. I prefer Mars Attacks personally in terms of the mid-90s alien themed comedy action comedies. But
I do too.
Yeah, Mars Attacks is great. Justice for Mars Attacks. Anyway, but yeah, so it should be pretty interesting.
Well,
so
you know what's not interesting, Joel?
Yeah, I was about to say, what's not interesting, Chase?
You know what's not interesting, Joel, is seeing basically the CGI from Jungle Book, apply that to a dog and another dog, and have them eat spaghetti behind a restaurant and look really creepy. So I imagine like a mixture of Garfield and Scooby-Doo animation, and it just freaks me out. All right, so what are we talking about? All right, so Lady and the Tramp is a animated Disney classic amongst us, 90s purebred Disney Renaissance people like Joel and I. Of course, Lady and the Tramp did not come out when we were born or when we were children. But
it's golden age, not Renaissance age. It's
exactly. It's the type of movie.
Right? So.
Well, it's the type of movie that when Joel and I see like the Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Lion King, we want to watch the older stuff, and that's what that was our gateway, was the Renaissance of the 90s. We went back and saw the older ones, and so so Lady and the Tramp, animated classic. Of course, it's got the famous, spaghetti scene. That's adorable. But in live action form, no, it's not. So they're going to be doing a live action remake strictly for the Disney streaming service. They are already starting, folks. It is going to happen. They're going to be doing these remakes. They're going to be doing Marvel stuff. They're going to be doing Star Wars stuff. Like, they're going to load this thing up to the brim. But this is the first kind of big piece of news for that streaming service, because at this point, we've just been kind of hearing that Disney wants to do a streaming service, and they've kind of dabbled in a couple of ideas, and they've thrown it out there to the public, like, oh, we might do a Star Wars movie, we might do... This is, like, for sure now, where, like, this might be the first one they kick it off with in terms of, like, big spectacle type of movie for them. My only worry, Joel, is seeing the Disney streaming service, just like what you put it with Netflix, just another place for VOD movies, and I have a feeling that Disney's going to just cheapen their movies, and it's going to have like the visual look of like a Nine Lives or something, where it just looks like a really cheesy set and like just bright colors, and there's like no depth or contrast to anything. It's just really bright and colorful and almost makes you want to throw up, Willy Wonka style. So I don't know, man. Like I said, it's kind of creepy to see two dogs CGI'd realistically amongst, I guess people. I don't know, and you're supposed to focus on them, and I don't know, Joel, help me here. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm not like some person that thinks that the original movie is some canonical great thing. I like it a lot. I'm not like I think I've maybe seen it twice, honestly, once in childhood and once, when I finally caught up to the sequel, the direct-to-video sequel that they made in 2001, like 40 years after the first movie. And the sequel is terrible. I don't like it. It's there are some good direct-to-video Disney sequels, like Mulan 2 is good, but Lady and the Tramp 2 is not one of those. And so I'm not somebody who holds the original in like such high esteem. I think it's fun. It's very sweet, and the spaghetti scene is cute, but it's gonna look really weird.
That's what I'm saying.
And plus, this is going to be another one of those situations. There's barely like any humans in the original, right? Or they barely factor into it. So we're going to be following.
They play out. Don't they play out like the Peanuts situation, where like Charlie Brown looks him up and it's the trombone sound? Like, yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, you can't understand them. So I don't know how they're going to play that and expect that to work. But yeah, it's going to be kind of weird. Plus,
well, Joel, the stories get stranger.
We're about to like leap into the upper atmosphere. But I will say, I'm not even probably going to get this streaming service for a long time.
I'm not either.
So it's just because they're going to make it high priced. It's probably going to be like $15.99 a month, knowing Disney, and because everything they do is higher priced than the normal market. So I don't even know. The Star Wars series is probably my favorite potential thing that's going to happen. This is definitely happening. And I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Let kids enjoy it, if not for the fact that they're going to be frightened by the live action or
by the
whatever.
Scooby-Doo animation of Lady and the Tramp.
Oh boy, yeah. It's probably going to be something like that too. I'm not a fan. So guys, this last story is the most insane thing I think I've ever heard in my entire life. I have a million, zillion, billion questions about this. So, all right. And this is actually one that broke last week, before last week's episode, but Chase didn't include it, and I'm pretty sure it's because he knew that we would want to spend more time on it. We already had enough news stories last week to talk about. This week's kind of light, but this one's pretty big. And basically, Shia LaBeouf has written a screenplay about the years in which he spent on the set of Even Stevens, and that is going to be made into a movie that stars Shia LaBeouf. But no, Shia LaBeouf is not playing Shia LaBeouf. That would be too meta. Maybe not too meta for Shia LaBeouf, but too meta for us. He's playing his own father in this movie.
Honey Boy.
It's called Honey Boy, which I don't understand that title at all. I don't know what it references.
American Honey?
Well, yes, but I don't know, like, other than that. Because this takes place in the years when he's not making that. So I don't know. Maybe this was like a nickname he had. I don't know. Lucas Hedges, the Academy Award nominee for Manchester by the Sea, will be playing him in this era. So, cutting away all of the weirdness about the story, the total like bizarreness of everything about this. And speaking of which, it's also going to be directed by what's her name? Hold on.
Alma
Harrell or Alma Harrell, who did like a couple of very, 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 very low profile indies a couple years ago. I don't think she's made a movie in about 4 years, and so she's going to be directing this one. Pretty cool because it's going to break her into the big time. That'll be interesting. But cutting away all the weirdness about this, this is my question. These are my questions. One is a sarcastic one. Who's going to play Christy Carlson Romano? Are they just going to get Christy Carlson Romano to play herself in the period of time when she was on this show? That's the sarcastic question, because I'm sure that they'll figure that out. But two, is this real life, Chase? Is this reality? Did I suddenly shift into a strange alternate reality where this story is something that's actually going to be playing out on the big screen? Can you help me out here? Because I don't even know what to say. It's so strange. I'm definitely interested because of the bizarreness of it, but I just don't understand. I know that it's about how his father was an alcoholic, so it's obviously going to be a story about that, but he's going to be playing his own alcoholic father. And if we're going to be getting the story through his perspective. So it's so strange to me. It's very, very weird, but it's probably my favorite news story of the week because of that. Everything about this is so strange and so unique and unorthodox, I guess. But I'm interested. I'm interested to see how this happens and seeing how this all turns out. I think that Lucas Hedges is a great actor. As I told you, as we came out of Manchester, he's going to be a big thing. I guess I just didn't expect this to be a role that he takes on.
I think you're just confused because you went from Lady Bird to this. And, Lady Bird's like one of your all-time favorites. So, I think Joel's correct. Like, he has went into another universe, and I believe it's the Cloverfield paradox. He's going to get his arm chopped off, and then good luck, Joel. All right, yeah, so with this story, Shia LaBeouf is an interesting cat. And I've always said for the longest time, the guy's a good actor. He really is. It's just his antics get in the way of stuff outside of work, and unfortunately, and even to me to some degree, it can put like a tainted image on you. And it's like, do I really want him to be in the movie? But like, he's good at what he does. Just, I'm glad that like when you read the story, like, he's trying to get sober, and he's, trying to turn his life around, and that's cool. He's doing different, unique things, like doing that road trip where he would get in random cars with people and just kind of take road trips. I mean, it's actually kind of cool. Just to kind of have intimate conversations with people
takes a lot of trust.
Yeah, sure. Exactly, and you got to respect him for that. And in this story, where he's going to be playing his father, Shia said that even when he was on Even Stevens, is when it kind of his trouble started, because he said that his father gave him his first joint when he was around 11 or 12. That's insane. Like, I can't even imagine being a kid and your dad like, yo, son, you want to take a riff off this, weed stick? It's like, Dad, what are you talking about? It's like, I thought you were my dad. No, but I think Lucas Hedges is actually a perfect pick for this. He kind of looks like Shia, like in younger form, just a little bit.
Yeah, he kind of does. I'm thinking about that now. You just kind of give him the curls, and
yeah,
that's pretty much it. It's gonna be interesting to see if they actually, I don't know if this is the top of his priority list, but if LaBeouf has them, even recreating some of the scenes from Even Stevens, that would be a lot of fun, because they're obviously going to have, it's taking place during that period of time, and if anything strange happened, specifically on set, they're going to have to do that, and so that'll be a cool thing. Getting actors, or getting just the original actors, because that sounds like a very Shia LaBeouf thing to do, to come in and just kind of be themselves when they were filming. Well, it would be very interesting.
I know the dad off Even Stevens isn't doing much, and this is actually...
And he looks the same.
He looks the same. He looks
exactly the same.
Every time when he pops up in a movie, he will always be known as, Even Stevens' dad. And this is actually, this is no joke. I went into the dentist's office last year, And you know how sometimes, like, when you go in, like, they'll have, like, people with, like, these ridiculously white smiles, like, being advertised in their lobby, like, oh, hey, come get this whitening thing for, like, 50 extra bucks, whatever. One of the wall advertisements had him in it. I was like, this is fucking creepy. We have the Even Stevens dad staring you down with his white-ass smile, and he's like, come get your teeth clean, young man. No, I will not, Mr. Even Stevens dad. So, yeah, no, I thought it was pretty funny. But as far as, like, bizarreness and just pure curiosity, I am totally on board, and I can't wait. But it sounds like that's your favorite story. I like the Gawker story, but, you know, the Shia LaBeouf story is also...
I do like both of those. Pretty much, like, it's one of those things where, in terms of the potential, it's the Gawker story. But in terms of the bizarreness, it's the Even Stevens story.
I think as long as Joel and I do the show till the history of time, I don't think we're going to get... Hopefully, not for a long time, anything as weird as the Shia LaBeouf thing. Like, this is probably one of the weirdest things we've ever seen. So, congratulations, Shia. You have done it again. All right, so let's move on to some trailers. This one is an interesting start because, of course, Melissa McCarthy, she is liked by some people, and she's kind of half and half with people where it's like, oh, she's annoying. She's just basically Chris Farley, like in Kevin James, but dumber, and her comedy's not really hitting and stuff. I like her in some things, but I can understand why some people do not like her. So this one is completely different. And so, when I was going throughout the trailers this week, I'm like, okay, we got a couple big ones, we got a couple small ones, and then this Melissa McCarthy one came out, and I did not expect it to be the way it was. So here's the story. It's a kind of a biopic where it focuses on loosely events of a certain person's life, and I'm about to say that right now. A biographer by the name of Lee Israel is no longer getting published because she has kind of fallen out with basically keeping up with times. Where if you have a person that's trying to help you publish a book and they want you to appeal to kind of the era that you're in, and they don't want to do that, of course there's going to be some resistance. And so she basically turns her books into... I've never read the story, but it's, I guess to put it lightly, it's like she deceives a lot of people. It's a very strange type of biopic because I had no idea where the trailer was going. And so this plays out more like a drama, but it's also being labeled as a comedy in some aspects. It's weird to see Melissa McCarthy that way. It is also weird to see her credited as Academy Award nominated, and people forget that she was for Bridesmaids. I don't know.
Even though it should have been Rose Byrne, in my opinion, but
yeah, I mean, an argument could be made there for that. This is Fox Searchlight doing this, and I don't know, man. Like it looks, the cinematography is nice. The performances look fine, I guess. I just don't know if they showed the best clips for McCarthy, because like when you make a movie like this, you want to like kind of put her in the forefront, like, oh my god, like this could be her next Oscar nominated movie. And I don't know, it just seemed kind of bland to me. Like, am I wrong in this?
I mean, I don't know, wrong. I completely disagree. I think this looks really good. Very strong performance from her. I think it's intentionally not showcasing a whole lot of her performance.
And that could be true. That could be.
Yeah, I think it's more focused on kind of giving us like, this exists. This happened. I think it looks like a really interesting plot for sure. Like this whole thing that she did to deceive people, and then of course obviously it comes back to bite her in the bum. I think she looks really good here. I've always said that comic actors are probably the best dramatic actors,
which I totally agree with, by the way. I'm just talking more of like the cut of the trailer. It just didn't really
the cut of the trailer. Certainly it's a little quieter than the usual trailer, I think, and that's another thing. But I just think that as a story, it looks really strong. It comes from the director and I was very much in the minority on this movie, but the director of the Diary of a Teenage Girl from a couple years ago, which I did not like at all. I know a lot of people did. I thought that it was kind of terrible, honestly. But that director, Mariel Heller, she directed the main actress pretty well, and now a comic actress, and now she's directing another comic actress in this largely dramatic story, and I think that it's certainly a perfect fit. It's going to get her name out there. In a way, I think that this comes out in the fall, and I think that we could be looking at another potential Oscar nomination for, or the possibility of one for Melissa McCarthy. And considering the Academy already has shown that they like her by nominating her for her big breakout role, it could breakthrough role, I should say. It could be that at least on screen, it could be that this is a big thing for her. So I'm certainly very interested in seeing this movie. All right, so Chase is going to hunt me down and kill me or something. Guys, there was another trailer that dropped this week, and we generally don't like covering second trailers, but if they're big enough movies, then we will do that. And this is certainly a big enough movie. A new trailer for Deadpool 2 dropped, and yes, I'm finally actually calling it Deadpool 2 because apparently that's the title. Yeah, this is a big fat whatever for me. I'm not a huge fan of the first movie. I think that Ryan Reynolds certainly makes it, work as well as it does, but I think that the movie didn't really make much sense of the fact that just because you're making fun of the fact that you're a typical generic origin story doesn't mean that you're not a typical generic origin story, and that movie is very much one. So certainly there's going to be room for improvement, at least for me, in terms of what this is going to do. It's got a new director, David Leitch, whatever his name is, and the action looks a little cleaner and crisper than the first one, which had a lot of weird processed look to it, with the green screen and all that. But yeah, this kind of fell flat. It gave us a lot of the humor, and I don't know. I guess I'm just, after seeing the first movie and not laughing a whole lot at it, I don't really get it. But that's me. I know in the minority on this. Chase, I assume you loved this trailer?
Yeah. So I did. I thought it captured the spirit of the first one. It like you said, it improves on the action. That's the one thing I've always liked about the hiring of one of the co-directors of John Wick, is that they know how to film action. And the first one's action was fine, but it wasn't like the breakout thing of that movie. It was just more of Ryan Reynolds showing us this character to the world, and you either like it or you don't. And this is what the first one was really about, was just kind of putting the stepping stones down for this character in this universe. But this one kind of takes, like you said, the action up to a whole different level. It does look cleaner. It's going to have wide shots where we can actually see what's going on. It's not going to have fast handycam stuff, and even if it is handycam stuff, it's going to be filmed in a way to where it's not going to be headache inducing. But I thought the humor worked. I thought the look of it looked way more expensive, which is great because the first one does have that cheap effect. But when your movie's made for $30 million, you can do what you can do. I mean, yeah, the green screen wasn't really that good in the first one, but once again, they got shortchanged just because they were scared about pumping out this R-rated movie and seeing how people react to it. Now that it is a movie that made as much as Suicide Squad, which was around 750 worldwide, that's a lot of money. They realized, okay, we should probably throw more money into it. Yeah, no shit. So yeah, I think it looks great. My favorite joke in the entire trailer, it's not even in the trailer, it's the cut card where it said from the studio of 27 dresses.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that caught me off guard because when it said from the studio, I wasn't even paying attention to what they would even do, and then when they put 27 Dresses and The Devil Wears Prada, I cracked up. It was pretty funny.
And it's interesting that they picked those because, and this is only something I'd know, of course, and Chase is going to be like, Joel, only you'd know that. I'm going to predict in 2 seconds. Those come from the same screenwriter, so...
Joel, only you would know that. Yeah, I just...
I actually couldn't remember, and then I looked it up, and they do. Aileen Brosh McKenna wrote both of those. And it was just funny that they happened to choose both of those. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they like put The Devil Wears Prada, and they're like, oh yeah, also she wrote the 27 Dresses. And anyway,
yeah, see, I wasn't even thinking about it. I just took it, as like, oh, 20 or whoever was cutting this trailer was like, I'm gonna pick like the two like heavy chick flick movies that 20th Century Fox has ever done and slap it on this like gruesome R-rated trailer.
Both good movies though, and I think that probably they didn't want to like bash on really really bad movies.
Well, and that's the thing is you have to toe that line because 20th Century Fox is still making this movie and that's their property as well. So it's like, well, it's going to be Disney soon, but
they had to at least take two that were generally well liked by audiences. Correct. Who would understand I like those movies, but that's a really funny reference.
Yeah, and that's why the joke would work because it's like you said, they're super popular. But yeah, I like the fact that they're introducing X-Force. Cable looks cool. Yeah, I'm happy.
Cable does look cool. I do like the looks of Josh Brolin. It's going to be a crazy 2 months for him.
I was telling I was telling my girlfriend that Josh Brolin, he might be in two big comic book movies, but like he's so different in each one because like Thanos is just typical Josh Brolin, little sinister voice. This is more of like a gruff Josh Brolin, and he sounds completely different. And so that's what's kind of cool about him is that he can.
And he also doesn't sound like from Sicario either. It's crazy. It's three very different characters.
Those movies are all coming out within like a month of each other. Like I don't know how he's going to even do all these tours and stuff. Yeah, I know he's going to see me on press tour. So
what he's probably going to have to do is like, okay, I'm just going to do for the first 3 weeks of April, I'll do Avengers stuff. For the first 3 weeks of May, right. I'll do Deadpool stuff. For the first 3 weeks of June, I'll do everybody else just go away.
Well, he's going to be in hibernation like after that. He's like, all right, I'm going to take like 3 months off, and then I'll see you guys in December. So, trailer was great. I cannot wait for it. And it's 4 weeks after Infinity War, so that just tickles my fancy. All right, so the next trailer, why, fucking why? All right, so this one is The Spy Who Dumped Me. I wish it would take a dump on me so I don't have to see it and just poison my eyes. So, Mila Kunis, Kate McKinnon, they scream a lot in the trailer. I guess that's what comedy is nowadays. They're entangled in something. Justin Theroux plays her boyfriend. He dumps her. He's part of CIA. Who cares? The trailer's not funny. Looks like generic schlop. Joel?
Well, so I completely disagree with this too.
Oh my god.
I think that this is actually the much better. There are two much better action comedy trailers this week than Deadpool 2 for me. And I promise I'm not going to just turn this into a Deadpool 2 dump fest. I don't think it looks awful. I'm just not really.
Okay, let's put it to you this way. I would rather watch the premise and the movie of the next trailer that we're going to talk about after this than this. And that one's about the game of fucking tag. So you tell me. Which one is worse? It is this one.
No.
Every single punchline was just a scream by Kate McKinnon. I'm like, well, she's doing the same shit she did in Ghostbusters, where it's like, I'm going to be the wacky, zany, goofy one. Whee! It's like, oh my, Joel, take it away. Explain yourself to the people why you like this. What's wrong with you?
If it makes me laugh, I don't care. And Ghostbusters didn't make me laugh, but
no,
I think that this looks really funny. I was laughing like a dumb person the entire time. I think it looks like a lot of fun. It's obviously going to be R-rated, and I think that that's a good thing. I think it looks pretty interesting. I was a little underwhelmed by that movie Spy a couple years ago, so I'm hoping that this one's better. But But yeah, I think it looks good. That's just me. I don't know. I like the pairing of Kunis and McKinnon. I think that that really works well, and it certainly looks like a better summer comedy than like Life of the Party and I Feel Pretty, which I saw those trailers again one of those trailers in front of Unsane, and yeah, the I Feel Pretty trailer looks terrible, and this looks way better. And I don't know. I just
Well,
had a
Joel,
lot of
if
fun.
we're comparing dump to dump, I mean, obviously, if I had to take the one that had like a gold leaf on it instead, then I'd go with this one. But like I feel pretty. What was the other one you mentioned?
Life of the Party, the one with
Yeah, all
yeah,
three of
Melissa
these are
McCarthy.
awful. But like, if I had to pick one, just solely based on like
I
concept,
just
I'd go with this one.
I think that I just think that it looks like a lot of fun. I mean, if it isn't, obviously it isn't. But take trailers with only so much salt. But um, yeah, I just think it looks fun, and I also think that our next one looks fun. It's Tag, and this one is
Yes.
apparently based on a true story. I haven't looked into this, but apparently this group of friends has for 30 years played tag in the month of May, and throughout the month. So of course that's a lot of a lot of potential there for some really silly stuff, and we see a lot of that here because you know a guy's playing tag while another one's kid is being born, and the anyway, I just think that this looks like a really fun ride. Not deep, not meaningful, not something that's going to be some serious like event or whatever. It just looks like silly fun with a great cast: Ed Helms, Jeremy Renner. Um, gosh, who else? I just lost all of it in my head.
Jake Johnson,
Jake Johnson,
Hannibal
Isla
Buress.
Fisher. Oh yeah, Hannibal Buress. Speaking of Hannibal Buress, my favorite part of the trailer is when is the exchange about watches,
Oh yeah.
which which ends with Hannibal Buress just saying time is a construct. Anyway, this just I laughed. I watched it on my phone and then I saw it again in front of Unsane. Or maybe it was Pacific Rim. I saw them back to back yesterday, so I don't know which one, but I saw it on the big screen and I just laughed my head off again. I think that it looks like so much silly, goofy fun. I can't wait to see this cast completely kill it. It looks so like high concept and just zany, and anyway, I love the slow motion like photography when one guy gets a donut thrown at him, and it's just so funny and dumb, and I love it. So this is probably this isn't my favorite trailer of the week, but it's a close second. I'm gonna say it's a close second for me. So yeah.
Okay, so a couple things, and people are gonna be shocked when I say this. I like the trailer. Also, side note, Rob McKittrick is one of the writers, and he wrote Waiting, and Waiting is a fantastic little, speaking of Ryan Reynolds, comedy about the restaurant business, and it's just like total gross out raunchy comedy, and I love it. But here's the thing. I do think this movie, while having a silly premise, is going to have some type of underlining theme of
It will.
growing
It
up
will.
and like, because the thing is, like, when you watch this movie or you look at the poster or the trailer, you're like, oh, it's just a goofy movie about tag, but it kind of struck a chord with me, and this happened to me recently, and by me I mean, like me and my my high school friends. So to get serious for a second, one of my friends' fathers passed away a couple years ago, and I had not seen my high school friends probably in like a good 3 or 4 years. That, unfortunately, that event brought us together, and it kind of made us realize that we're getting older, we're getting married, we're having kids or whatever, and so we need to all kind of hang out more often and enjoy these moments. Even if we get older, like, we should still get together and like kind of reminisce about old times and pick up as if we never, left off in the first place. And there's a couple of shots in the trailer with like the funeral and stuff, and it's like, yeah, they're playing tag, but it's this game that like ties them together even if they get older, and it's like it's just something kind of sweet about that in like a weird, silly way. So
it is sort of in that Judd Apatow kind of sensibility where there's a bit of a human element, and I didn't mean to say that it like I guess I overstated it. It wasn't going to be completely like empty, and I didn't mean empty. I just meant like the main thrust of this is going to be the fun they have. And
yeah, correct.
The goofiness of the game is obviously going to tie them together as friends, but I feel like that's probably not going to be some gigantic big thing in the movie, besides at like the end or whatever. But certainly it's going to be sweet. It looks good natured too. And
exactly, and I think the goofiness of the comedy is actually going to help the movie, because if they can really hit on the emotional kind of heart moments in this movie, it's going to make the goofiness of the comedy seem more fun, and we actually want to kind of see them play their game type of deal.
Yeah,
it's
for
like,
sure.
I'm cool with them doing these weird, zany things because this is what they do. This is their friends. This is their kind of group, and we can all kind of relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I don't want to spend this taking shots at movies that are popular, but I really hope that what they don't do, and it looks like they're not, but I hope that what they don't do is go the Hangover route, which is make all the characters unlikable, and then try to go for like the heart to heart thing, because if they can just make them likable, they'll have earned the goodwill to make that shift at the end, and I think that'll really work. But we'll have to see for sure. And I certainly am going to see this. I think I'm down. When does it come out? Is it?
It's like June something. It's during the summertime.
Yeah, it might be. Let's see. Tag. It is coming out. Yeah, June 15th.
There you go. And it actually comes out a week before the last trailer we're about to talk about, which I know Joel and I are both excited for. And this one is my favorite trailer of the week. Just to I agree. Even as much as I love the Deadpool trailer, if we're talking straight up trailers that came out of nowhere and like knocked me in the mouth and like I'm like just flat on my ass going, "What'd you do to me, trailer?" And then it's just like, "Don't worry, I'm good." So this one's called Under the Silver Lake and is written and directed by David Robert Mitchell. And you're like, who is this guy? Well, don't worry. He did that movie that broke kind of grounds in the indie horror category, which was It Follows. I love that movie. I own it on Steelbook Blu-ray. The Steelbook's awesome. It has like this really cool 70s flavor to it, but I'll show Joel when he gets to my apartment. But it's a really interesting Steelbook. Please check it out and check out the movie. But that movie was kind of different on the horror genre, and really kind of took a stab at making something unique, and having a killer that wasn't really seen, and that's what kind of made it creepier. And it's just a really well done movie that has a killer soundtrack. So this one, first of all, I had no idea who was in it, but I knew it was coming. So Andrew Garfield plays this guy, right? And he gets along with this girl, and there's one day where she just vanishes, and he has no idea where she went, and he becomes obsessed with it, and he tries to track her down and try to figure out what happened to her. And it's going to be played out more of a noir feel, and have this kind of murder mystery aspect to it in modern times. And it looks fantastic. The trailer was cut very well. It got me intrigued as soon as they introduced the whole missing girl thing within like the first 30 seconds, and you're like, okay, where is this going? And then it just kind of goes down this rabbit hole, and you're like, all right, keep going. But Andrew Garfield looks great. Jimmy Simpson is in it. Joel, how do you pronounce her last name? Riley
Keough.
Yes, Riley Keough. She is also in it. Topher Grace is in it. It's a very interesting cast indeed. But yeah, I can't wait for it. It is a well done trailer.
Oh, I can't wait. And it's interesting because he's directed now 3 movies that are completely different. He did It Follows, which is a very it's paranoid horror flick, very much a throwback to Carpenter kind of era, but also very new in a certain way. And he also did The Myth of the American Sleepover a few years before that, which is a great. It used a cast of unknowns, and it was this coming-of-age high school dramedy. And I feel like I'm one of the few people who've seen it, but back in my Blockbuster online days, I rented it, and it's a really good movie. And this looks like it's going to be a completely different thing from his last movie again. It looks great. This looks like sort of this year's Inherent Vice to me, in very specific ways. It's got that. I mean, it's set in the modern times, but it's sort of got that energy of the journey is going to be a bit more important than the destination feel, and it certainly has that sort of Thomas Pynchon kind of vibe to it, where it's this neo-noir featuring characters and a look that don't fit noir at all. And I can't wait. It's got a great cast. It's got a great concept. The cinematography looks beautiful. I'm super, super, super excited for this. And I've been excited since I heard about it happening like 2 years ago, is when I first heard that this was happening. And I've been waiting for it to come out. So I love this idea. I love that A24 is behind it. And I can't wait to see it.
Listen, A24 is killing with their trailers lately. Like, their trailers have been off the charts. Yeah,
their movies, I just watched one last night that I'm going to have a review, let's just say, in the next week. And that was quite the wrong step. But for the most part, they do really well with their projects, and they release terrific trailers. In fact, for the movie that I'm talking about, they actually released a good trailer. So, and we talked about it on the show. And so you have to look out for that probably Wednesday. The Vanishing of Sydney Hall. I'll have a review of that on Wednesday. And I love them for their advertising and all of it. It's a great trailer.
Joel, you know what's so great about A24 and their marketing is that their marketing's so good that it just kind of makes you insane sometime. That was my transition. So moving on into the movies that
guys,
we're going to be
I'm quitting. I'm just gonna leave.
Hey, you know what, folks? I'm gonna get my degree in transitions here pretty shortly, and I feel like I'll get better once I get more training. But until then, they're gonna just be absolutely cringeworthy. All right, so let's move on to the movie reviews, guys. This is the main portion of the show. A couple of totally different movies dropped this week. We have Steven Soderbergh coming out of his 5th retirement with Unsane, and then we have Pacific Rim Uprising, which is also interesting because Unsane is directed by a guy that's been retired more times than my grandparents, and then Pacific Rim Uprising is a movie I didn't think would happen because the first movie broke even just about, and it was a complete flop over here. So these are both interesting cases, and we get to break them down. So the first one is Unsane, and you know what? I'm always terrible at this. So Joel, what is this movie about? Who is in it, and what the hell is going on?
Yeah, so this is Unsane. It comes from director Steven Soderbergh, and it stars Claire Foy, who people who watch The Crown will recognize as Queen Elizabeth or Victoria or whoever she plays on there. I can't remember anyway. I don't watch it very well.
She definitely plays the Queen.
Yes, she does. And she stars as Sawyer, a sales associate for some sort of company that does something or other. Never actually tells us. But she's a relatively new hire because she has been stalked by a man, played by Joshua Leonard. And she sees him everywhere she goes. She sees him in her work, just kind of walking the halls. She sees him in the face of the man that she brings home from the bar. She just sees him on the street randomly. And, she knows she needs help, so she goes to this clinic. And in the excitement of actually finding a counselor to talk to, she signs a document. And, of course, the curse of not reading the things that you sign sets upon her. And she is involuntarily admitted into this facility where it turns out that a man who works there has a very sharp resemblance to her stalker. And it's a very paranoid thriller. I haven't revealed much of anything that happens in this movie, to be completely honest. And I was excited for it after the trailer. I thought that it was a very, very like it really raised your blood pressure kind of thing. It was intense, and of course the big selling point is that it was shot on an iPhone 7 Plus, which is I think the same exact phone that Tangerine was shot on, using an app that that director found and kind of manipulated in order to make a movie, and this one uses it as well. And so I was excited for it on both of those ends, and I'm going to kind of work out my thoughts through my review. So I'm just going to hand it over to Chase. I know that you were excited for this as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I love the trailer. It came out of nowhere. And we're going to start out the review with the whole iPhone gimmick and just get it out of the way. But with that being said, it was a trailer that came out of nowhere, shot on an iPhone. Steven Soderbergh coming back from the dead, I guess. Of course, he did Logan Lucky last year, but still, the guy, like I said, retires more
He's
times.
He's probably headed for another Contagion, Haywire, Magic Mike side effects run. That's what I'm guessing, because we have now a movie within the year. That the last one came out. I suspect that he's probably going to make one again pretty soon. And that's what I'm guessing.
But Steven, if you're listening, just please make up your mind. All right, so I like the trailer. I was looking forward to it, and I'm kind of like with Joel. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. This is the first time in a long time where I don't know what grade I'm gonna give this, and I'm actually gonna work out my thoughts as we talk about it, and then I'll decide towards the end. That's usually what happens sometimes when I'm kind of unsure of like what I think. And Joel and I will talk about it. He'll convince me on some stuff, and I'll convince myself of some stuff, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay, I'm dead set on this now." So, but yeah, I watched it, and I can tell you that was a unique experience.
Yes, very strange. So, because I really am not sure, I'm going to go ahead and start with my positives.
No, Joel. Before we break down our positives, do we want to discuss the iPhone thing real quickly?
Well, that's going to be one of my positives, so okay. I might as well just start with, and I'm actually going to start with that because it's certainly one of the more successful things here, I think. So I think that they made the right decision because there's this really like compressed factor to the compressed quality to the image that it's very claustrophobic. There might be shots that are long shots, but because of the compressed nature of the screen, it's still claustrophobic. And I think that the sickly yellow cinematography, of course, the cinematography is done by Soderbergh under his the pseudonym of Peter Andrews, I think. There's this like sort of mustard yellow quality to the image that I really think is fitting, because much of this movie takes place in a psych ward, and I think that whenever we think of psych wards, we always think of mustard yellow walls. So I think that kind of fits. And of course, there's a lot of like murky darks and brown and weird like use of blue at the beginning and end that I liked a lot. I think that the movie is very stylish in that way, and I think that the gimmick works because of that. It's basically inserting us into her mind so that you have a bunch of these really like close-up shots of the side of her head, from the side of her head, and to kind of get us into her mindset of constantly having to look over her shoulder, which is literal by the end of this movie. Let's just say the looking over the shoulder thing, and it's and I think that it's really successful because of that. It's definitely a gamble to do something like that, but I think that it pays off here. Other positives: this movie's undeniably well performed. Claire Foy really dominates this movie with a performance that conveys a lot of unbridled terror in a way that is very compelling. And I think it kind of reminded me of, I don't know if it's as polished as this performance or as good, but it reminded me a lot of Natalie Portman in Black Swan, in a very big way. Somebody who's just slowly kind of losing it. And, the actors around her work really well. You got Jay Farrow, who plays one of the inmates, a very interesting role that takes a lot of turns you don't expect. Juno Temple is this insane girl named Violet who keeps calling Sawyer Allison for some reason. Amy Irving, I haven't seen her in years, as Sawyer's mother. And Joshua Leonard's really creepy with his. There's this one shot where part of his face is kind of blacked out because of the angle, but we can see his left eye, and he has widened his eyes completely and looks completely insane, and it's like a mark of his performance that he's able to do that. I don't even know if you know what I'm talking about, but but maybe you do. Do you know what I'm talking about, that shot?
It's towards the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's just like the way they lit that and captured the eye, which is completely open, like completely, was really creepy to me. And I also really liked. I'm gonna look up his name. Hold on, because I had him. Gibson Fraser, who plays the doctor who heads the facility, I thought had a couple of really good scenes where you really don't know where his interests lie. He very much puts it into question. But in any case, good actors and a really interesting concept. I think that the first half of this movie, in particular, is really strong in that it's sort of this cautionary tale about the bureaucracy of the medical field, and again, the dangers of not reading what you're going to sign. And I think that the movie should have gone down that path, and that's why I'm kind of on the fence about this movie. But I think it should have gone down that path. I think that the part of this movie, which is kind of really two movies in one, that follows her as she's trying to exit escape the facility, is very interesting, and it's very intense and paranoid, and just really, really intriguing. So yeah, those are pretty much my positives. I think all the actors work. I think the gimmick works, and I think that one of the movies in this movie works. So that's where I'll leave that off, and I'll hand it over to you. We kind of have to be careful about talking about this movie, though.
Yeah,
really, because it's one of those where you have to watch it because, even if maybe I'm not quite recommending it, I can't really figure that out yet, and I don't know if Chase is in the same way. You still have to see it because there's a lot that we can't really discuss. There's a lot of surprises at the end of this movie. So
yeah. I'm kind of like along with you on the positives. I actually do think the overall cinematography works because it kind of, like you said, has this compressed, closed off, claustrophobic feeling because this isn't in widescreen. It's letterboxed, and so we have this kind of square image that you're watching for an hour and a half, and it actually makes sense because most of the people in this movie are just completely just batshit crazy, even the sane ones, and so having them kind of like boxed in these situations with the way it is shot, it actually enhances the experience. And I don't think it's a gimmick. I think, like, I agree with Joel, it works. If people want to just say it was a gimmick and that nothing more, then I don't think you actually analyze this movie.
Well, the best way that I'd put it is it's a gimmick, but it works. They put a lot into the gimmick. And
yeah, it's not like Steven just like pulled out his phone and started just shooting stuff. Like, they still have professional sound to it, lenses and lighting and stuff. It's not like they just completely was
the filming on and off for 12 years thing for Boyhood is a gimmick. It's just the reason that it works is because it's so complex and all of that. It
also depends on the way it's told. Like, if you can pull it off, like, I don't care. Like, if you try with an iPhone.
If there would be no clear reason for this to be filmed on an iPhone and they just did it because they could, then that would be a gimmick. In fact, I think that because of that, shooting Tangerine on a phone may be slightly more of a gimmick than it is here. But because of, the kind of story that tells. But even there, I don't know, I know you didn't see it, but even there it was still, and even in like the last scene of the Florida Project, there was still a reason behind it because it was kind of telling a certain type of story and a very kinetic one. And that's kind of what you want to have here because it's very much got a home video quality to the image. It's not as, it's not at the images per second that you would usually come across in something that's shot on digital or whatever. But it very much works because of the fact that it's so kinetic and so paranoid. You can really only shoot something like this on an iPhone. Through this kind of thing where it's a lot of there's a shutter technique that's really cool in one scene where she's given medication. And it's just like that kind of thing you can really only capture on this compressed image, and this is kind of the perfect outlet for that.
Well, I was going to say that it works twofold. It works visually, like you said, with colors, the lighting, and having the feeling of claustrophobia, but it also works in the sense of it makes every single actor in this movie and every single location feel real. Like, it felt like a really hyper realized documentary, and it felt like we were watching real footage. Like, that's what makes the paranoia more palpable, is having all these actors who I know. Jay Farrow is from SNL. I know all these people are big names, but like they felt like real people. They felt like we were watching these people like actually experiencing like this insanity in this this home or whatever. And so I really enjoyed the iPhone cinematography. It works for this one, even when she's outside of the actual center and she's out about in the city. It still works because it has like this creepy element to it of stalking and stalking our main character, and it works for the direction they decided to go with. May not be right direction most of the time, but it is what it is. And then like you said, the performances. Claire Foy is really great in this one. I've never seen her in anything ever. This is the first thing I've ever seen her in. I've not seen The Crown yet. I'm not going to even bring this up in the negatives because it's so minute. Her accent flows in and out a little bit, and it's a little.
It is very noticeable. This was a quick production though, and so I assume that it was just a matter of not being able to have enough time to immerse herself in the accent. It does go in and out though. It's very much. If you have an English accent or a British accent or anything from the UK, most actors and actresses can do it flawlessly and we'll never notice. But if it flows in and out, it's really noticeable. And and I don't really blame it on her. It's just like maybe they should have went in. I don't know. It was like a weird American accent, but also Southern American. Like it was strange, and so I was like, that doesn't work. But her overall character and just an overall engagement as the main character, totally down for. Also, side characters really great. Jay Farrow surprised me. Like he was actually my second favorite of the entire movie, and he can actually pull off drama really well while also having this kind of Will Smith type of level or Rock level charisma that just he's kind of kinetic on screen. You're like, the guy that does like a million impressions is really good at pulling off drama, and I was really impressed. Joshua Leonard, really great in this one as well. I also I'm not going to say who it is because I think that is a part of the surprise. The cameo. Yeah.
Holy shit. I can't believe they kept this under wraps. I was like, I cannot believe this person is in this. But yeah, it actually worked for that one scene they were in. So I enjoyed the cameo. But if you're going to watch this movie, just please be surprised by the cameo and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, don't look it up because
don't.
It's also a really important scene. So if you look it up, there might be details about that scene, and you don't need to find it out. So just go see the movie if you want to, and then you'll find out who that is.
I totally agree.
He's a Soderbergh regular. We'll just say that. But there's a lot of people who are those. So
yeah, exactly. He's worked with a lot of people. But so the performances all across the board, fantastic, and also casting. I hate using the term like A actors or B actors. These are capable actors, but they're not big names, and like they just work. They just continue to work and grind it out in the business, and so. Putting these type of actors...
There was a time when Amy Irving was huge.
Correct.
And she was in like everything in the like latter half of the 90s or something. But Now, of course, she's a talent, but she's not in every movie, and she's probably my third favorite. Like if I were to say the top three, it would probably be the same as you, Foy, Farrow, and Amy Irving, who is terrific as her mother. And yeah, it's just a bunch of great actors doing great work, even though they're not the biggest names,
but
that
it
adds,
works though to the realness and the kind of
yes,
grounded
it adds to
mentality of this type of center.
yeah, it very much works to the authenticity. It doesn't fill it up with a bunch of, he has that kind of pull. Even for this movie, obviously he got that cameo, and he could have filled this up with a bunch of names. You think of Logan Lucky's probably not a story that needed so many big names, but it did. He's got that kind of pull, and he could have filled this, but he was smart. He knew that he didn't want to take away from the intimacy of this story, and however it might ultimately go, but he filled it with talented people, and they're all really good in this movie.
Yeah, and so I think that's where my positives end. Well, one more thing, I kind of enjoyed the music.
Yes,
the
I
music
don't know
was
who
really
the
good.
composer is, but because they're not credited, but yeah, the music is terrific.
It kind of adds to like this whole like mental institution mentality where it's
Yeah.
like it's very
There's a weird like paranoid jazz flavor to
yeah
it.
that's what I was gonna say. Like it was like
And then orchestral at the end too, because there's a lot of like violins or whatever synthesizers as violins, however they're doing
well,
that.
I mean, do
at
you know
the
what the
end.
score reminded me of? It reminded me of like a throwback film from the 70s because
Yes.
even the way the movie ends is almost
Yes.
like a 70s film. Like
Yeah, all
yeah.
of the credits are put on the screen as sort of this the '70s kind of Alan J. Pakula movie
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, for sure.
So I
that's
guess
where
I guess bleed into the negatives, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So here's where the negatives start. It's at the exact moment when the person who has a sharp resemblance to her stalker comes in. Because, all right, guys, here's where it falls apart for me. And this is why I'm so like I gave it a grade on my website. I've got the review up there already. But that was really just how I was feeling at the end of writing my review, and perhaps it's the same way right now. So here's the problem. Here's what happened. The moment that the stalker potentially comes back into the story, at least from her perspective, everything kind of falls apart because suddenly it's just a story about a woman trying to escape a mad killer or a mad person, kind of. All of the other characters in the facility had some importance up until this point, and then suddenly they become just cogs in the plot's machine. That's all they are. They're just devices that the movie will use to signify the danger that the character's in. And you think about I'm trying not to reveal anything here, but there are some gruesome fates here, and it feels false to me because of the story that the movie was telling up until that point. And I think that obviously the screenwriters here, Jonathan Bernstein and James Greer, they have a lot on their minds. The story about the mental health care system gone awry, and then also this stalker movie. They have a lot on their minds, and that's great. But the thing is that I think it's a little too much, because you have this very interesting story about a woman who's been gaslighted by the healthcare system, and then you kind of shift wildly to this other story that had a secondary significance. It was more of a device to question her, to help us like question her sanity, and then it turns into this literal battle, and it becomes an escape movie, and it's very simple. It's much more simplistic than what came before it, and I think that it kind of betrays the strong start this movie has. The performances never waver. They're still as good. The cinematography is still as good as the much of the action takes place at night, so there's a lot that is kind of hard to see, but he keeps it just light enough that you can tell what's going on. So the filmmaking stays on target, but I think the storytelling falters, and I think that this movie kind of betrays the the potential that it had at the beginning, and that's why it's so frustrating to talk about this movie because there's a lot on its mind, and I don't think that it sees it through. And that's a big thing because, as we know, everything about a plot of a movie is important in determining how it works. And here you have this gigantic section of the plot where I really kind of didn't care about that. I cared more about her escaping the facility. And to add another layer onto it just felt like overkill to me. In a way, it just felt like, you know, piling on the character in a this is a lot of suffering kind of way, and it just didn't really work for me. So I guess that's pretty much my
But
thought.
I mean, it's a major one though, because
Yeah, it is. It is
I have the same problem.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad that we kind of are on the same page here because it's a really frustrating turn that the movie takes. It's still intense, and I don't want to give people the idea that the filmmaking is the problem here because Soderbergh
It's more story based.
It's more storytelling, and I'm a storytelling guy, specifically. This is why I'm gonna get into part of this in my Pacific Rim review, believe it or not. I'm a storytelling guy. I very much gravitate toward analyzing that stuff rather than just the filmmaking. I understand that. I understand the mindset that some film critics right now seem to have, which is, talk mostly about the filmmaking, how that works, and if that works, then the movie works. But for me, I think that the storytelling has to be up to snuff as well. And here, you have a great story at the beginning of it, and then it takes this wild left turn, and it doesn't really fit the other parts of this movie, and it's just it's very unfortunate, but yeah, I think that I've kind of worked out my grade. It's pretty much the one that I gave on my website, so I was right on the money. I'm giving this a C+. It's a near miss for me. It's got some good filmmaking, but it's got some really wobbly and good performances, but it's got some really wobbly storytelling that kind of undercuts it to me. So it's about as unsane as it is, but it should be a little more focused than this. I think it's not very focused ultimately on the characters. It's focused on a situation, and I don't think that it works at the end. So
yeah, I think
that's my grade.
Its interest just kind of wavers off towards the end because when they introduced the whole concept of insurance fraud and scams and stuff, like that was more interesting to me than what they went with.
And it's relevant too because we have a lot of things going on right now about the healthcare system.
Correct.
Particularly with the bill that was passed and the fact that the administration wanted Obamacare out. A lot of this had to do with mental health, and so we have this movie that kind of takes to task the whole system for kind of gaslighting a lot of people and for money purposes, and it's a very interesting plot, and I think that they address it in a very interesting way, and it just is such a bummer that they have to take it in this direction because it ultimately has nothing to do about that. And
yeah, it turns into a generic kind of horror thriller after that. So like it's almost like I'm trying to think of like okay, so like what if like Friday the 13th, like it started out with its movie with like I don't know, like someone like talking about like a murder that happened like on a street and it was like in Wall Street. I don't know, like it involved like some serious crimes, and then it just turns into a slasher film. And it's like
by the end of this movie, the stalker is no more complex or interesting than Jason Voorhees. Like that's the fact of the matter. I'm not a Friday the 13th fan. I think I've watched 2.5 of those movies. And this suffers from exactly that problem. It just becomes an exercise. It becomes an exercise, and it's not an interesting exercise.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was going to say, like, we shouldn't really trust the guys that wrote Larry the Cable Guy Health Inspector and The Spy Next Door. So,
really?
Yeah, that's what their writing credits are. No joke. Look it up. That is what they wrote. So, wow. Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, they set up this great premise, right? And then they have like this Stalker B storyline take the A storyline, and it just, like what Joel said, completely undercuts it. Now, the actual vision and style of the film, with Soderbergh making it with the iPhone and having this 70s flair, the Stalker B storyline is something that would become of like something from the era, which would make sense. But the problem is, you set up your movie with this modern idea, with this 70s flavor, but then completely just abandons the modern thing and goes completely 70s, which is fine if you just establish that from the beginning. But you are conflicting, story concepts and ideas here that also gets too grotesque for no reason. There's one scene in the movie that happens in the middle, just super abruptly, by the way, and first of all, you're wondering how that's even happening, considering that, like I said, Joel's right, we have to dance around it, but there's a scene that happens in the middle that's so abrupt and so grotesque and kind of over the top that I was like, why is this even in here? Like, why did we even need to see this? And I am not a prude or anything. I like graphic horror films, but like, that's one scene in particular.
Yeah, it didn't really fit.
It was gruesome for no apparent reason. I was like, why is no? Like, you're complete, no, just stop. It didn't fit with the movie. Like I said, it just felt like this weird train stop that just had to happen, and then the movie kept going. But it's just one of those conflicting things. But I'm actually on Joel, a C+, where it's like, it's a half and half movie, but I'm giving it that plus purely because the actors are dedicated in their roles and the actual look of the film works in its favor. So
unfortunately, the co-screenwriters of Max Keeble's Big Move tried to take the I'm sorry, I just wanted to name that movie because that's another one that they co-wrote.
I'm sorry, but Larry the Cable Guy Health Inspector is probably the worst thing they've done.
They also did Just My Luck with
Lindsay Lohan.
Lindsay Lohan, so that's C+ for both of us. What did y'all think of Unsane? Did y'all like it more than us? I wouldn't be surprised because it's pretty popular with the critics. I think I'm going to look that up right now. It's got a...
Now, you guys are
79% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I mean, and we gave it technically a positive review. Like, we gave it a
positive-ish,
fresh tomato. Yeah, so it's not like, we completely crapped all over it. And hey, listen, if I had to pick and choose what to watch again, I would watch this again over Pacific Rim Uprising. Yeah. So, Joel, that's a great transition for you to rip this a new one, because if you guys want to hear my review and my thoughts, you can go on my YouTube channel. I got a full-on review up there, and I was a little kinder to it than what Joel's about to probably do.
Well, probably not. I think that we have the same grade, but it's not very good. I'm not going to rip it a new one. I think that there's certainly worse.
There's worse movies out there, trust me.
Yeah, there are worse movies out there. This is better than probably 3 of the Transformers movies.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So,
but that's the problem.
I would say it's on the level of the 3rd Transformers.
But that's one of the problems is, and I'm sure you'll address it, is that they're trying to make it like the Transformers, and like you're like, stop it, Universal.
Yeah, it's because the first movie was not in this style. So, Pacific Rim Uprising, this is a sequel to 2013's Pacific Rim, except that Guillermo del Toro, who co-wrote and directed that movie, is only involved in the executive production of this, which means that he was just kind of there and aware of it being made. But this one comes from director Stephen S. DeKnight, who is this is his first movie, which is, I guess, a lot of confidence for Universal to take him on. And I suspect that they're probably not going to hire him for much in the future. So this one, I'm going to be honest with you, I saw it yesterday after I saw Unsane, which I was still thinking about, and a lot of the plot details have already leaked out of my brain. So I'm going to kind of try to remember what this movie's about. But it's absolutely one of those, and I think that Chase will agree with me. There's nothing worth remembering about this plot.
No, so, and the plot is so asinine for this type of movie that it makes the the kaiju look normal, and the story twist that they wanted to do was completely bizarre and didn't even
bizarre,
fit with this universe.
bizarre in a weirdly boring way though.
Yeah.
Like that, this is the most bizarre thing they came up with. Means that it's not a very bizarre movie. It's okay. So Stacker Pentecost, the character in the first movie played by Idris Elba, apparently spawned a son that we never met, and his name is Jake. He's played by John Boyega, and he is the half-brother of the Mako Mori character, played by Rinko Kikuchi, who was the best thing about the first movie, I thought. And he's kind of a hard partier. He's a petty thief, and he's got to grow up a little bit, and this is how he does it. He sort of becomes a surrogate parent for a young girl named Amara, I think it's Amara, played by Kaylee Spenny. I'm not entirely sure how to say her last name. I apologize if she's listening to this, which she's probably not. And she has built her own Jaeger. Of course, Jaegers are the robots that that are piloted to defeat the monsters, which are called kaiju. And she is she becomes a cadet. They get in trouble with the law or whatever, and they become he kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm kind of struggling with telling you the plot because it's so hard to remember. They get into trouble with the law. He's kind of reinstated into his what is it,
like a Jaeger Flight Academy or something like that.
Yeah, basically she becomes a cadet. He becomes whatever the next level is. I forgot, lieutenant or corporal, I can't remember. And kind of joins ranks with his old commanding officer, played by Scott Underwood. Wow, Scott Eastwood. And then kind of Geisler, played by the completely out of place Charlie Day, comes back, and he's kind of formed this weird connection with the kaiju. I'm not really giving anything away there. Also, Gottlieb, played by Bern Gorman, comes back, and he's kind of had this scientific experiment going that potentially could be the source of trouble here. It's kind of impossible to tell you what's a spoiler and what's not because I can't remember half of the plot already, and I saw it yesterday. That pretty much should tell you everything about this movie. It's got this just generic plot. Now, I will say that probably the listeners are going to be like, but who watches these movies for the plot? Because really, I mean, you're just sitting in the theater, you're waiting for monsters and robots to punch each other. And this movie provides that. But the problem is, I think, and this is not a way of me like putting myself above our listeners. Absolutely, I love all of you people because you listen to us. I'm not saying that I'm like better than you for this. This is just how I've kind of evolved a little bit, is that's just not enough for me anymore. You can't just sit and just experience something being watched on screen. It's just, it's basically disengaging for the purposes of kind of just eating popcorn. And I like to be a little better than that. I like to try to engage in the movie that I'm watching. And here it just doesn't work because of two major things. One, the plot is completely uninteresting. Like Chase said, it takes this weird turn in the third act that still doesn't really make it any more interesting. It's just a lot of explaining, over and over and over and over and over again, all the rules involved in piloting Jaegers and what the kaiju can do and all of that. It's just all very boring. And then the other thing is that the action scenes aren't even very good here. They do have an advantage over the action scenes in the first film. For one thing, I think, and it's something that Chase and I have talked about before and disagree on, but for me, I think that it's better that we're able to see these action scenes because they're set in the daytime than in the first movie, which had better action scenes, but they were all set at night. And that meant that, especially in 3D, they were extremely murky. And even with like neon lights and stuff, it was just two big, gigantic, monster beings, like fighting it out in close up in the dark. And it was just kind of hard to see, even though clearly the points of the action were well choreographed by Del Toro. And here, we have all the action scenes except for one of them in the daytime, and we can see the action, but it's all completely polished to the point that it's utterly, I'm going to put it the way that our friend Mark Dusick put it. They're completely sterile. There's nothing interesting in the action scenes here. It's all just so generic. There's no excitement. There's a bunch of flashy special effects and no interest in them at all. And there's also no creativity or imagination. You think of the boat slap in the first movie. There's nothing along the lines of that here. All it really does is it has, a kaiju rises out of the water and then, or whatever, and then a Jaeger, comes in and beats it up, and all they use are like knives, and then they basically level all of Tokyo in the finale in a way that should quiet the people who complained about Man of Steel, and that's it. I mean, that's all it is. There's no brain to this movie. There's no interest. There's nothing there. However, I will say that the positive thing here is that it isn't insulting. It isn't something that is so completely awful and despicable because of the fact that its only reason for existence is to be a big action showcase. It certainly is competently made. The action sequences are clearly, there's a lot of love put into them, but there's just no excitement in them. It's sort of the same problem that I had with Tomb Raider last week. In that same way is there's no excitement in the action scenes. It's just a lot of flashiness, a lot of people yelling, run, 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 or whatever, get out, get out, get out, go, 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 all of that stuff. And there's no excitement. There's nothing attaching us to any of the characters. All of the cadets that this movie has in it might as well be completely interchangeable. Actually, Mark put it a good way. They happen to number the exact number of people they need in the end to be able to pilot the Jaegers. And it's just that kind of convenience is a sign of laziness. And it's just a kind of a lazy, dumb, kind of boring movie, and I didn't enjoy myself, unfortunately. I want to. I certainly would have been down for that, but I just didn't enjoy myself. It wasn't a fun movie. It just kind of sat on screen and didn't really engage with me, and just kind of offered a lot of the same old. People who, people know who they are, who will overlook a movie like this for the plot deficiencies. Again, there are a lot of people who aren't going into this movie for that purpose, and they know who they are, but for me, it just isn't enough, and that's why I'm giving Pacific Rim Uprising a C-. It just kind of sits there. So I think that you had the same rating, right?
Yeah, I had the same rating, and I think my biggest issue, and if you guys want to go in more detail, go search out for it, but there's a clear difference of the first one, where if you ever watch Del Toro in interviews, the guy is super passionate about what he does, and there was passion put into the first one.
Yes.
Even if it was just a dumb robots fighting monsters movie, there was a lot of vision, style, and passion. I liked the first one. I should have probably said that at the beginning of the review. I think I gave it like a B or B-. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's a solid little monster flick. And the thing is with this one, it's not Steven S. DeKnight's fault. It's Universal's fault for making this a Transformers film instead of actually continuing on another fun monster flick.
Yeah, they made it into a product. And now we have, this, the first movie had that really interesting idea, and they use it here. But the first one had the really interesting dynamic of the fact that to pilot the Jaegers, you have to have two pilots, and they both have to meld with each other's minds. And the first movie took, a big, they focused on that a lot. That was a big part of the plot. And here, it's a big part of the plot for exactly one scene where we learn about the girl's past, and that's it. Otherwise, it's just a function that already exists, and the movie doesn't do anything with it. And that's basically the movie summed up. It just kind of takes this potential of, set up by the first movie, and then it just turns it into a product, totally corporate, mandated movie that, people saw that the first one was a cult hit on video, and they decided to go with it, and it just doesn't work. It's very sad, but in any case, that's my grade. That's also Chase's grade. What did you guys think about it? Did you have fun with it? Let us know. Did you even like it less than we did? Let us know, because I'm interested to find out. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Chase, I guess we aren't doing any.
Yeah, no, it kind of saddens me too, because I really wanted to see how bad Pacific Rim Uprising would do and be like, hey, Universal, this is 2 for 2 now. And what I mean by that is this. Universal, I know Joel doesn't like it, but you got your successful Fast and Furious films. You got your successful Jurassic Park films. Stop trying to make everything else into franchises. You did this with The Mummy, and it didn't work. You tried to do this with Pacific Rim, it didn't work again. So stop it. Just please stop trying to make everything into a franchise, because it is annoying at this point. And that goes for any studio.
I've been hearing though that the big bomb of the weekend is Sherlock Gnomes, which I'm not super surprised about, because who saw the first? I mean, I did, but who saw the first movie? And who's going to be interested in enough?
Joel, children.
Well, I know, but they were children then, and now it's 7 years later. They're not going to be interested in seeing that. So, and it wasn't like some super, like sought after movie on video. I don't understand how that movie was made. Honestly, it just looks so bad. And Joel, I'll see it on Blu-ray because I see everything. But
if the Smurfs 2 can get made, anything can get made. So yeah, unfortunately, no box office this week, but. What I might do is the last time Joel and I did this, we recorded on Saturday, and when the numbers do come out, I'll put the actual top 5 down below for you guys, and the numbers and the movies and stuff, so you know all that. But yeah, we can't really comment because we don't know. So that will do it for this week's episode 223. Next week, guys, I am by myself. Joel has quit. He has left me. He wants me to sign the divorce papers. I told him I'm not going to sign them, and he's just going to be stuck with me. And so I am by myself next week, and I will be reviewing Ready Player One and Isle of Doogs. That would be Isle of Dogs in English. And so I'm excited for both of those. I know Joel's excited for both of those, and it's sad that he can't be on, but you know what? It happens, guys. Stuff happens, and Joel just has to go away and find himself, because apparently he gets really angry at me, and he says I'm the issue in the relationship, which is a bunch of bullshit. So, yeah, so that will be next week, guys, by myself. So it might just be another hour and a half show. Go old school, just like I did back in 2013 when I didn't have a microphone and I spoke into my computer. That is how I recorded them, no lie. So next week, 224, Ready Player One, and Isle of Dogs should be fun.
And I will be back the following week. I'm just going to be on vacation, and the vacation sort of ends at the same time that we would be planning this show, so that's why I can't be on it. I will be seeing Ready Player One, so people who follow my writing, you'll be able to see that review on Friday morning probably. And then I'll also have a review of the Vanishing of Sydney Hall on Wednesday, and then on Thursday my reissued review of The Avengers, which I watched Thursday night, sorry.
Well, Joel, that's a great transition to plug your other social media.
Yeah, so this week I also reviewed The Death of Stalin and Flower. Both reviews can be found at my website and also at dallasmoviescreenings.com. I like Death of Stalin. I'd give that one a B, and Flower is pretty bad. Gave that one a D+.
No dancing around that one.
No dancing around that one. So those, and then I also have reissued reviews of Thor and Captain America: The First Avenger. Had a major turnaround on the Captain America movie. I didn't like it previously, but I like it a lot more now.
Yeah, thanks for catching up with the times.
Yeah, no, right? I'd give both a solid B. So I'm a fan, and so you can read those there. You can also follow me at Twitter at Real Joel Copling, and yeah, and then on Letterboxd at J Copling. Oh, and to finish the sentence that I started earlier, I'll be back the following week because we're doing reviews of A Quiet Place, and then I'm going to be doing a review of Blockers, which I wasn't excited for until the South by Southwest buzz started. So I'll be back for that episode.
Yes, and so that will be the next one that Joel returns to, but I will be, like I said, here next week for you guys. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at RealChaseLee. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like I said. You get reviews like I do have The Death of Stalin up there. I got Flower up there. I got Pacific Rim Uprising. If you guys want to watch with a bowl of popcorn with my Leisure Seeker review again with that 20-minute awesome review, please do that. So that will do it for this week's episode, guys. And hey, listen, we appreciate you guys every single week coming back weekly. And if you're new, hopefully we didn't scare you off too much, and you will come back next week. So that will do it for this week's episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast. And hey, listen, if you made it through this entire movie podcast and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully we convinced you to be one. That is Joel. I am Chase. We will see you guys next week. And, well, not Joel, because he will be filing the divorce papers, but whatever. But I will see you next week. So peace out, everyone. Let's play that outro music. All the links in the description below. Bye-bye.
Bye.